Hey guys, so yesterday I was doing a guide on a in-depth look on the traits of the Dagger Pistol Thief and the versions I use and then the builds I'm running on. So today we're having a look into the gear choices of those builds. So let's deep dive into that subject. So for the PvP build, I yesterday already mentioned that I'm using Berserker's Amulet and the Rune of Divinity, which gives you stats to max up to 80 on all stats and 10% maximum health. When running on Berserkers, you will need that, but it's a vital choice that you choose the Divinity Rune, so you have 15,000 health and deal a lot of damage basically. My second choice is the Marauder's Amulet. Then you go with the Rune of the was it? Scholar? Great. So you basically, this is your damage dealing and this is your health choice. But let's stick for the Berserker's Amulet for a second and the Rune of Divinity. I placed the short bow as my primary weapon, just mentally. I explained that in my last video because I used to not use the short bow for a long time as my primary weapon, but basically it is while roaming in PvP. So that's the reason why you use swap sigils, like Sigil of Energy. You gain endurance back when you swap to that weapon, and cleansing, you remove one condition when you swap to that weapon. But you can also apply like swapping runes to your dagger if you see it's more situational to play on a dagger pistol while disengaging out of the fight, for example to offensively engage back into the fight. This means that you, for example, can rune with a run of escape, that you remove movement impairing effects from yourself. You already have that in your trait lines here with your evasive skills. But let's say if you run out of that, for example, if you already used all the evasion by running with your short bow, like this, and you're stuck on initiative, and you swap to the weapon, lose your movement impairing condition, you might have a bit more of a sustainability. The current setup for my dagger pistol, I stick with the Sigil of Exploitation, which gives you with deals more damage, 5%, to targets below 50% health. And this Sigil of Exposure, that the next attack while I'm swapping inflicts 5 stacks of vulnerability for 5 seconds, which is good if you want to stack up on multiple conditions to deal actually more damage if your build provides that. In World vs. World, while running on a dagger pistol build, you actually, like, I placed the short bow as the primary weapon here as well. It's just for me. You can decide which place you will take those weapons to. You're totally free on that. It's a lot easier though to switch weapons in World vs. World because the sigils are stick to them. In PvP it's not. If you swap them, you will lose the... I mean, you won't lose, but for the weapon setup you will mess up your sigils, so keep that in mind. Right, but for the gear choice in World vs. World, I choose on the weapons, I choose the Sigil of Doom and Sigil of Bloodlust when going with Mighty Infusions. I will put in all of my stats, I put Mighty Infusions in, except for, I think, 4 Precision. They are missing an Ascended piece currently. I swapped the build out for my build guide today. So, but basically you go with full precision infusions and the rest goes with might infusions. Your back piece you can then not swap to assassins because you already have a very high core precision. You can keep it on Berserk or Marauder if you're missing a bit of sustain and vitality. So, but the rest go with Berserker, Rune of the Scholar, which I'm having here presented right now. You can see I will zoom in right now. You can read what stats it provides your build. Right. And on the dagger, I'm going with the Sigil of Air. On the pistol, I'm running with the Sigil of Blood, which will give me, it has a cooldown of 5 seconds, but it gives me more vitality back out of the fight, which is a very good choice actually if you want to survive with a Berserker build. Other than that, if you want to run Marauder, then go for a full Marauder setup on your equipment. You can either choose situationally. I would choose the shortbow to be Marauder still, but the dagger and pistol to keep Berserk, so you can have a bit of a high damage output, because currently that is what you need. By attacking the enemy actually you get health out of them, or you actually survive by downing them first before running out of initiative, then you can't save yourself anymore, or out of evasive skills that just to a certain degree stack up again. For the Deadeye build, I explained the traits for in the last video. I will also put the link to this video, of course, into this description, and you will have jump marks in the other videos so you can navigate through the certain builds and can inspect what you want to see and know about the Deadeye, for example. Because it's also running on Berserkers and Rune of the Scholar, because of the high damage output you need to sustain the fight actually, but when it goes to the armor you go, except for the accessories, you go full on Berserk. For the accessories, you get a Marauder back piece, a Berserker, and rest is all Berserker. And for the weapons, you choose also Marauder stats, so you can survive actually a bit longer. Yeah, for the sigils of the rifle, I go with the superior sigil of force to deal more damage, and of air to unleash a lightning strike. For the daggers, I go with Sigil of Air. For the pistol, I go with Superior Sigil of Blood like in the other build. So you're running on rifle and dagger pistol, but I recommend you can also run on dagger with the same sigil then applied on the other dagger, so you provide yourself a bit of health while going very close to the enemy. So, that you know the gear stats. Then let's move on to some combat mechanics. I will explain now how to actually use the gear, and the traits are explained inside the different game modes. Let's start with PvP. So the last time in my video I explained that you don't have to basically spam everything that deals damage, but you play situationally, because dueling is not your job. You are a roamer with that build. You have high mobility by your evasion skills. You make sure you always stack up on swiftness by evading while running throughout the map and using your shortbow 5, the infiltrator's arrow, so you can move pretty fast, and most fast of all the roaming builds currently out there, and still a very, very good choice on that. Between the close and like side noder, for example, which is a rotator between close and your close point and the mid, where the team fight is happening, where you usually situationally gank, but you can also rotate very fast between close and the far point, so it's the enemy's home node. Also, don't be afraid to use your shadow step. It has a 50-second cooldown, which might look like it would be a lot, but actually, while having also the alacrity from your team provided while moving with them in the mid fight, for example, you always get some boons. And the infiltrator, the shadow step, will provide you a huge advantage when opening the game, because just imagine how long you stay on close to cap it, while running with the shadow step then. Like opening the fight, directly running out, getting your swiftness like that, activating one infiltrator arrow, moving with the shadow step, and then porting with the infiltrator arrow to the close point. You will be very fast on your point, You won't, like, it's not your fault if you see your Shadow Step returning running up. You won't be able to use that while capping the point, because of the time of the cooldown of, of the uptime of the Shadow Step return. It will not stay when you're capping close. While the shortbow is your primary weapon overall in PvP, while moving between points, you also attack in the team fight. Because of the bouncing of those arrows, you actually deal a lot of damage over time by just occasionally dropping a cluster bomb, but make sure you actually let the cluster bomb explode in mid-air, as it deals more damage and applies more bleeding to the enemy. So, for the other skills of your shortbow, you can actually use the shortbow in combination with your blinding powder field. Not only for the 2 like I just did, but you can also apply that with your 2 of the shortbow. It has an AoE stealth, which means every teammate that is close enough to the black powder standing inside the black powder field, while you're doing the cluster bomb, it will, only if it hits the ground though, it will cloak the whole team in stealth. You see a lot of thieves using their choking gas. Use that occasionally on downed enemies while they're rezzing up, because it has an AoE opportunity that you hit multiple targets, and when they're trying to res up, or the teammate of them trying to res them up, or even another teammate tries to save its teammate by stomping your teammate, which means, you know the mechanics, when your teammate dies and the other one is down, they get actually healed up again and can stand up. So you want to interrupt that, because it has an initial impact days, which means it has none over time. Well, the choke gas is placed, so there is no days anymore. But on impact, while the choking gas hits the ground, everything around in its field is actually interrupt while doing that. When you can, and you use your infiltrator's arrow, try to place it on enemies, as a lot of people forget. It also has a condition application, which is blindness for 5 and 3/4 seconds, where the next attack misses. Keep that in mind, because it can actually help you in very squishy situations where you need to disengage out of a fight. You can maybe, let's say you're standing on Colosseum, standing on the ramp up here, trying to evade too close, some enemy comes to you. You can actually jump down the Colosseum Empor bridge. Maybe you can imagine that right now. And while you jump down, you can get back up when the enemy follows you, and do that on a very close corner, for example, where you are up and the field maybe also hits the enemy down still. So this might be a mechanic, for example, that you can use for escaping and also using your environment. You can also use that while running towards an enemy and confuse them, while they think, oh okay, squishy, you're on, let's say, like 2000 health, squishy, easy target. You just shortbow into them, run further away, and maybe have your another shortbow 5 ready, and disengage out of the situation where the target might try to burst you down but misses its attack because of the blindness applied to it. When you're on Dagger Pistol, which is your primary dual concept you're using, make sure you follow one rule. Delay the usage of your combination of Black Powder and Heartseeker as much as possible. Reason for that is that Black Powder provides a field that stays on for long. It is actually 4 seconds, right, and has 3 pulses of blinding the enemy, which means if they're fighting close to you, they will get blinded, deal a lot less damage, and you can still attack them, and then in the end use your Heartseeker to take the advantage of doing a backstab. For me, a very good option always was using the black powder, and while the enemy tries to, for example, not attacking you because they recognize I'm blinded currently, so they try to build up some attack. You can actually interrupt them by stealing outside the black powder. This will confuse them, but right after, because they would expect you to use Heartseeker, but right after you can jump out and, yeah, cloak and dagger them. Because of your trade lines, Weakening Strike, which enables weakness onto the enemy, after you dodge, like you have to evade an attack, and the Havoc Specialist, which deals more strike damage based on the endurance that is missing, which equals up to 50%. So you want to take that with you before you actually engage into the fight. So, and by doing what I just shown you with the stealth, for example, you evade the attack then, which counts as an evade. If you're in a team fight, for example, if you want to 1+ in a 2 versus 2, then in that case, the other team's opponent, which is maybe not blinded in that second, will attack you. You can evade, use the advantage of your trade line, and then attack them immediately. But keep in mind, stealing is your most important interrupt. Unless you're playing with distracting daggers instead of impairing daggers, you don't have a lot of interrupts in that build, except for your headshot, but that costs 4 initiative and you don't have the time to use that. But keep in mind also that headshot is a much better interrupt for single targets to stop resing or stop stomping than the choking gas, because once you need to switch to the weapon, and secondly you have to pay 7 initiative. So yeah, keep in mind, stealing should not be your opener always, but if you see, oh, the enemy prepares something like a skill to buff, or a healing skill to regenerate, or even to create barrier, for example, then you can of course use your stealing right in the beginning of the fight if that occurs in the beginning. So if you're wondering, but how do I even get to the target most of the time if my swiftness is up because my evasion failed and I'm pretty much doomed right now? No, you're not, because you have your Shadow Shot. Shadow Shot is a good finisher because it provides good damage, like 1062. Compared to that, let's have a look what the Heartseeker does. Below 50%, like 200 more, which is of course more, which equals to like 3000 or 4000 crit damage you could make, but this also reaches a similar amount of that damage, and it can finish up really fast when you just want to engage for the last damage, or if you're chasing off an enemy, for example. Let's see, like a catalyst of your team is fighting here, damaging all the enemies, focusing on one's running away. You can easily shot to them, kill them, and you're done. Other than that, your Shadow Shot is, I mean, I already told in the beginning that offensive, or in the other video as well, that your offense is actually your best defense, and this goes very well for the Shadow Shot, because Shadow Shot has a great blindness provision onto the enemy, which means you can basically jump to them, attack them for a bit, make sure to use your standard attacks, like make the full standard chain through, because it provides another, beside of your vulnerability you provide while evading, it provides some other conditions as well. When I'm out of combat you could see that, but I already explained that in the last build, which yeah, you can just jump onto. I will link the video again in the description. Heartseeker, of course, is your spam option to apply much more damage with while the health of the enemy is pretty low. But it also has the combo finisher Leap, which we already discussed that a lot, and I mean, this is the basic knowledge about the thief. You do black powder and Heartseeker to stealth your theft. But you can do that as well from other fields. You can also do that. Let me see if I get something. No, I don't. You can get, if you, for example, plant a poison field you get from an engineer, you can jump out of that and get an aura, which provides you with some decent buffs and sometimes can even save your life. So make sure if you see a combo field down on the bottom, maybe with fire from Elementalist, for example, you can just jump out of that. Also, you can use your Dagger Storm, your elite skill, to apply bolts flying around while in a combo field. So always make sure you combine certain attacks that offer a combo finisher with the combo fields your team also provides you. And of course, when you can provide a combo field like I told you with the AoE stealthing, also do that. The team will thank you and the match as well. While using the Basilisk Venom as your elite skill, you want to make sure you combine that with any flying source of projectiles you can fight with. So yeah, you get a better stun of the enemy and then you can jump to them and fight them. I mentioned in my trade guide that impairing daggers is a good option to down an enemy. You can actually use that to also use the combo finisher, for example. As I already mentioned, you use the fields and the combo finishers for that. And the impairing daggers to down an enemy, which is pretty much at 10% health, for example. That should be enough, because the damage output of your impairing daggers is insanely high for a utility skill. Your Shadow Step not only provides map control by giving you a higher mobility, but also can confuse the enemy in an offensive way. You, for example, can jump behind them, attack them, prepare something, go back to there, go to them, jump here. Just a combination, for example, that could be imaginable with the Shadow Step. You also could disengage out of the fight, prepare your black powder, get your Heartseeker for your stealth, and then port back to the position near the enemy, because most likely they will try to defend the point while preparing some burst option. So be prepared. If you jump back while in stealth, they can still hit you. Maybe take something before you run in there to like stun them, prepare the field, heal yourself right after. Like when you're outside already of the fight, for example, like this, run after, state yourself again, and then jump back. Last but not least, for the utility skills, you have the Signet of Agility, which removes the conditions. One rule here, just make sure don't use it too early in the game. If you have one condition type applied, don't just spam the Signet because it has a high cooldown of 30 seconds for a Signet. In that case, for condition cleansing, this is the only available option that you always can rely on. I mean, there are other options of condition cleansing, but they differ in the way which you apply them. They're very situational, like the dash, for example, that gets you out of stunned, like immobilized conditions. But this one actually gets rid of every condition if there are 3 on you, if you time it wisely. And you really have to, like mid-game or in the end of the game, when you want to down the enemy actually and don't want to get bursted by their still applied conditions while they're already down, you will want to make sure that you use that in the correct format. Your word versus word build functions a bit different, because you primarily stay in Dagger Pistol as your survivability option, because the field is on a larger scale, usually roaming, and you can use your environment much more creatively with even jumping between different heights, levels of the area, so you can advance your fight on a vertical scale as well. And you also can use multiple stolen skills, like for example Thief when you steal, or certain mobs, like most mobs, you get Blinding Tuft, which applies blindness and stealth, like blindness to the enemy, stealth to you, and you can use that very creatively during the fight without the limitation of just having one single skill that most likely in PvP won't make a use because of the high dynamic team fight you could get involved to, or the dueling that somebody +1 you. You can easily, like, if there was a chance that this build would be viable on PvP, it would be a good option to disengage by this, but on World vs. World you need a much more survival build than actually surviving by bursting, rather surviving by actually prolonging the fight and letting the enemy bleed out while you stealth constantly. But I have to say the Dagger Pistol Thief is not as good as other meta builds currently, so you will have a lot of losses in dueling because there are many counter classes that can almost one-shot you. We all know the current rotation. So let's see how the patches go in the near future, and with the new expansion, if we see some significant changes to that, and if the Dagger Pistol build might get a bit more, yeah, useful again. The rest of the World vs. World skill guide is relatively comparable to PvP, that you use your the skills are already explained here in PvP. You use them like exactly the same like you would would do that in the other game mode, but for the utility skills you get more evasion with this shadow step. I won't do that while you're mid-fight, but prolong the usage of shadow step a bit more. You can also, while having the advantage of range to your enemy, swap to Channeled Vigor to heal yourself, which provides a very good healing skill while having much higher endurance when you disengage. But personally I always stick with Withdraw because also of the condition removal and the evasion, the immediate evasion, which also applies weakness if timed properly. Then on World vs. World, because of the optional or occasional ganking of other and the evasive opportunity you have, I use Dagger Storm to get rid of certain ganking situations when somebody +1 me or +2 me even, and I want to disengage. I can use that additionally after my evasion skills. You have seen me doing that in certain parts of my montages. But I certainly also love to do the Dagger Storm inside a combo field, also in World vs. World, if my initiative grants me the opportunity to do that. Other than your Shadow Shot, your distracting daggers can be blocked, so use them wisely. You can interrupt the enemy with that. It is a very healthy choice in World vs. World, because also it has a very low recharge and skill cooldown time. You can charge them in 3 seconds. You get 3 distracting daggers, and in 20 seconds you get the full stack back. So basically, yeah, this is your best survival choice of playing against heavy stun skill applying enemies. One very important tip in the end, a lot of people are surprised when telling them, if you turn up the volume in World vs. World, it is more important than in PvP to time your evasive skills. If you turn up the volume, that little muffled bell sound, like a clattering sound in the background, is actually your mark, your audio mark, when your evasive skill passed the threshold, like one of the 3 here. So yeah, if you hear that, it means you can evade again. Moving on from the mobility of the Daredevil, with the second dagger pistol build I presented you on the trait lines in the last video, the Deadeye dagger pistol, and with a rifle. So I won't go into the dagger pistol skills, as I explained them very carefully now, but with the rifle skills. So when you run also like me on 2 builds, when to actually use the dagger pistol Deadeye. You can probably use it most of the time, even without even swapping to the Daredevil, because it's a good build currently and it offers much survivability, like the 4 of your rifle, where you can just be even faster. I would say 1/3 faster than with the short bow. Also regarding the initiative recharge, so this is a very good option also while wielding the rifle, while you can get stealth while you evade. But keep in mind you don't have the highest mobility on your base character without these skills. So yeah, you always open the fight, other than with the normal Daredevil, with the Deadeye, you open the fight with a Deadeye's mark. And then you always get steal time, which provides you quickness, so you can easily move into position and crit up to maybe 6-7k with your double tap, or in that case if you sit down, the 3 rounds burst. You don't always have to kneel, because it makes you very slow, you know. That feels like now I'm getting bursted again, I can't, like, I stunned myself, I can't get up. So you can also, which applies a lot of damage as well, you can also open the fight by just moving around and use, instead of the 3rd tap, the double tap, and then switch to dagger pistol in that case and attack the enemy like you used to with the dagger pistol mechanics. Then your double tap, your skirmisher shot, provides a good damage base, especially regarding the spotter's shot, which immobilizes and cripples the same time for 4 seconds, so the enemy is immobilized, stunned, gets out and is immediately crippled. It gives you actually more survivability in this build, because you can easily target the enemy with your quickness, shoot them once, attack with your 2, stun them, maybe build a wall in front of them to block projectiles that could stun you and hinder you from your evasion, and then just evade with your 4. So this could be a rifle tactic, for example, and then you can just re-engage by instantly refresh your Deadeye's mark and gain initiative if you don't have any. Keep in mind, before you use Mercy, I mean, I just mentioned a situation where you need to use Mercy because your rotation is otherwise blocked because of the low initiative, but other than that, you use your Mercy just as a last piece of your rotation regarding the Deadeye's mark. You open with Deadeye's mark, apply your stolen skill, then you can refresh the stolen skill by, for example, stealthing yourself. Whoops, I misclicked. With stealthing yourself, get a stolen skill again. Then, while being revealed, just imagine I am still revealed, I can use Shadow Meld to avoid the revealing status, stealth myself, and while the target would have been alive still, I would have gotten, let me show you, another stolen skill. Yeah, here you can see it. And then I can refresh by getting another stolen skill, can deal more damage, and mark the enemy again, and use the stolen skill again. So this provides every time like 2000 damage. It is a good burst actually, and yeah, it will help you also to survive because of the high damage output you apply while under the effect of quickness. So yeah guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope this whole guide helps you and is a good addition to my trait description on how to use the thief. And I'm super illuminated right now because of the player behind me. I hope I illuminated you today with the guide, and if you have anything else you need to know about the rotations or maybe other builds, then just let me know in the comments. I'm more than free to do more builds in the near future regarding sword dagger, for example. I got asked for that from a commenter, and yeah, let's see how that works out. Until then, have a great time and take care. Bye! My dear peeps, if you don't know already, I started streaming on Twitch, and you can watch me live via the link I've posted in my YouTube channel. You will find it when you click on my main page. So, see you on Twitch, and until the next time, bye bye!